Hey scholars, this video introduces you how to develop a sampling system for your primary research. A sample is a smaller subset of a larger population. You study a sample in order to make a generalization about a population. Sample size will affect the likelihood of you finding interesting data and affect your credibility when you use that data to make claims about the population. Your sample should be large enough to be representative of a population and allow you to make generalization. One rule of thumb is to aim for about 10% of the total population, but I won't hold you to that for this class. The more homogeneous the population, the smaller the sample can be. You'll need a larger sample for more variety within a population. Ultimately, I expect you to spend about 4 to 6 hours gathering and coding your sample, so that is one factor you should consider in determining sample size. Coding for more features may require a smaller sample. Fewer features may allow for a larger sample. Smaller samples for longer texts, larger samples for shorter texts. If you're doing very short text like tweet, Instagram posts, or social media comments, you could probably aim for about 100 of these posts. For longer texts, you might do 50 posts. You might do 10 20-minute videos, or 20 10-minute videos, or 50 3-minute videos. Some students want to include a sample of both posts and comments, so consider the total number. You could do 20 posts with 5 comments per post for a total of 100 comments and 120 total texts. You don't always have to take a comment from every post. For example, you could have a sample of 50 subreddit posts, then take 5 comments from a random selection of just 10 of those 50 for a total of 50 comments and 100 total texts. Then these numbers are just suggestions, so you'll need to decide what works best for your needs. There are 3 main types of sampling: random, purposive, and combination. Random sampling is the most likely to produce a generalizable sample. In this system, you start by numbering all the texts. Note that this step alone could be too time-consuming for some large populations. Then, determine how big your sample you want, and use an online number generator to create a list of numbers, 1 through the size of the population, equal to the size of your sample. For example, 100 posts, you'll need 100 random numbers. Then use the text that correspond with each number generated. This process can be really time-consuming, and it may not be reasonable or manageable for large populations, but it can work great for smaller ones. To make randomization more efficient, you can combine it with purposive sampling. Purposive sampling is what most students will use because of the time constraints for random sampling. In purposive sampling, you first create a list of all inclusion and exclusion criteria. Then you apply that criteria to each text in the population. Each text that meets the criteria is added to the sample. Each text that meets exclusion criteria is left out. Some criteria require you to examine every text, which may be unreasonably time-consuming for large populations. Different criteria may be created for different types of texts within your population. For example, you might have one set of criteria for original posts and another set for comments. And this can be combined with random sampling. One of the easiest inclusion criteria to use is time. For time, you could select something like include all of the most recent 100 posts or comments. This is the most popular option for most students. You could do the 50 oldest posts and the 50 most recent. This will allow for comparisons, but some platforms may take too long to scroll back to the 50 oldest. You could do sequence like every 5th, 10th, or 20th post. Note that this is not the same as random. Sequence works well in combination with time, so starting at the most recent, selecting every 5th until you have a total of 100. This allows you to go back a bit further in time than just time alone. Combination time and random, so you select all posts from this year, then use a random number generator to narrow that subpopulation down to just your samples number. You could use topic or purpose as an inclusion feature. Include every post that mentions a specific topic or that shares a common purpose. For example, all posts asking for help or all posts complaining. You could select posts that have a certain feature. For example, all posts that contain a photograph, a video, or that use first person. You could use a combination of time and topic, starting at the most recent post, selecting all posts about X topic until you have a total of 100 posts. Combination of feature and random. Number all posts that contain X feature, then use a random number generator to select a specific number of that subpopulation. If relevant, offer relevant, clear explanations about what kinds of posts will be omitted. Some examples are you might want to omit any tweets or omit any posts over 500 words or any videos over 20 minutes. Sometimes exclusion criteria are just the natural selection of inclusion criteria. If you're including all pictures that include a human, then you're omitting all pictures that do not include a human. If you're analyzing more than one type of text, for example, original posts and comments, you may need to develop different systems for each type of text. When analyzing comments, you can analyze only comments made directly on original posts, entire comment threads, or sample comments within multiple threads. In your MA2 sampling plans and major assignment 3 method section, you will need to provide a clear, systematic, and repeatable process for gathering your sample. The sample must be repeatable. Imagine other researchers trying to replicate your research. They should get similar results when applying your sampling system. Inclusion and exclusion criteria must be objective and explained well enough that another researcher would include and omit the same texts. You will need to explain your rationales and acknowledge your limitations. For rationales, you should explain justifications for each of your choices and how this sampling choice helps you gather the best data for your research question given time constraints. Acknowledge limitations. What will you not be able to discover based on your sampling choices? Use rhetoric to minimize significance of limitations and try to present limitations as opportunities for other researchers to answer other questions, not just as research weaknesses. Note that your sampling choices may change your research question. You might add the word recent to your research question if you're only going to collect the most recent posts. Ask a question comparing changes in rhetoric if you're selecting oldest and most recent posts. Ask a comparison question if you want to collect samples from different populations. How does X use Twitter differently from how they use Instagram? Narrow your question if you want to select all posts which talk about a certain topic. How do members of X group talk about the issue of Y? Ask about comments. How do followers of X account use their comments to react to posts about Y? After, or more likely as, you select your sample, you will need to save them in one safe place. You may need to recode your sample at some point or return to it to gather examples and qualitative data, so make sure you have a stable location with all sample text securely stored. For non-video posts and comments, take a screenshot and copy into a separate document. Include all relevant data within the screenshot or add a label, for example, time and date of post, author of post, number of comments and likes. For video posts, copy the links into a separate document. You might consider taking a screenshot of key scenes, though this might happen during analysis phase instead. The next video will discuss how to plan your coding and analysis of your sample primary texts. Good luck for now. Bye.